Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today I thought we'd take a little detour from fixing reels every day or looking at why reels fail and so on, and just look at the fishing industry and what's happening to it. Sometimes we get so close to a particular niche within our industry, fixing reels, for example, that we fail to see the bigger picture out there. And so what I thought I would do today is look at a recent report that was just issued. It's called the Special Report on Fishing. It was published by the Outdoor Foundation, and they do an annual survey and health assessment of the fishing industry based on, viewer feedback and the like. So it's important to note that a lot of the information that we get in the fishing industry or about the fishing industry is anecdotal. That means it's by observation and not necessarily by any scientific means like surveys and the like. And an example of that would be a lot of the information that I collect. So I talk to a lot of folks, everything from bait and tackle stores to individual anglers who bring me reels to folks that sell fishing tackle and reels at flea markets or other outdoor places. I gather my information off of that. So typically if I'm talking to a vendor, it's how's the business? Well, that's always a general opening mark, and it's good, it's slow, it's whatever you may be. And of course, some of that has nothing to do with the folks that are fishing at all. A lot of times that's economics. And we've had some interesting spikes here with concerns over tariffs and the like that may skew some of those remarks. So it's always nice to go to a survey that's conducted by a reputable organization. This one was commissioned by the Recreational Boating and Fishing Foundation. And, just compare notes, see what's going on, see if it checks with what you think is going on in the industry, and confirm your suspicions about what's actually happening. Why is that important? Well, if you're selling, for example, you want to know who your customer base is, and you want to know if it's changed, how it's changed, why it's changed, and make sure that you have the products that will support their needs and their wants as well, right? So having the fact-based information is always a good thing in terms of setting up a marketing plan and a selling plan. That's also important in terms of understanding maybe why your business is slacking off. For example, maybe you do reel repair and you're just not seeing as many reels come in. What would that be a sign of? Well, it could be a sign that folks that were once fishing are moving on to other things, that they're dropping out of fishing in lieu of other things. And that's good to know, I guess. And also it may be a matter of the types of reels that you're servicing and the like. So let's take a look at that. The special report on fishing, again, it was just recently published. Again, it's a product of the Outdoor Foundation in conjunction with the Recreation Boating Fishing Foundation. It's a report on 2025, so it's a view into 2025 based on 2024 data. So one of the things you want to know is that fishing was booming in the COVID era. It was one of those few things that you could do outdoors that, kept you relatively safe and unworried about the spread of the virus on the waters and the like. And even there, when we were in New Jersey, a lot of the charter boat captains had to reduce the size of the groups that were participating. If they had a boat that could handle 75 people, they were generally restricted to handling maybe 25 or 30 just to kind of keep that thing going. But regardless of that, COVID did send a lot of people outdoors, as indoor activities tended to be restricted. And a lot of those folks chose to take up fishing as a way to do that. And in 2021, 2022, it reached record highs in terms of new anglers and new participation from first-time participants or people that were returning to fishing, folks that enjoyed it in the past, maybe stopped fishing for a while and decided that they were going to re-engage in the sport and, have some fun with it. So let's look at the overall demographics of what's going on in the fishing world today, otherwise known as fishing participation. Well, these numbers are good to know, and I hope I don't make these too textbook for you, but just gathering a little information about numbers always helps, right? So the first one up, of course, is the total participations. 57.9 million people have participated in fishing in the last year. Now, again, it's a 2024 statement. 57.9. Think about that number in our general population. That's up from 46 million a decade ago. So a lot of new entries into fishing. And this is an all-time high, 19% national participation rate. Think about that. 1 in 5 people in the country has taken up fishing and has participated in that. Now, participation ranges from one trip or one event, right? Maybe you're just grabbing a pole and going down to the pond, or fishing 365, right? Every day of the year. So it's a very wide variation in that. And overall, and this is where the tackle industry and everybody kind of gets excited, and this is where they base a lot of their marketing strategies on. There were 895 million outings last year. That's 895 instances where somebody grabbed a rod and decided to go to the local pond, river, lake, get on a boat, go into the ocean, surf, fish, whatever it is. And this survey does cover the differences between freshwater, saltwater, and even fly fishing. The average outings was 15. That's always interesting in terms of that, and it was up from 14 in 2023. So people have gone fishing more, and on a net, there were 7.8 million more participants than 5 years ago when COVID was just breaking out. So not only did folks go fishing in 2019, but it seems like a lot of them have stayed fishing after they decided to do that in the COVID era. Well, it's kind of fun to look at where they fish and who it is that are fishing and where's that growth coming from. And that's the next chart here. It's still a male-dominated industry. 63% of the participants are male. Interestingly enough, the fastest growing group within that is 65 and older. That makes sense, right? People that are retiring. But it also is somewhat of a warning signal, too, because you would like to see your fastest growing segment be youth anglers. And those of you that watch my channel know that I'm pretty heavily involved in teaching kids to fish and youth angling programs in and around our area. And if you don't cultivate the base, if you don't start the folks getting interested in fishing young, chances are they won't pick it up at a later date. Now, a lot of the fastest growing means that some of these folks were fishing, and life got in the way, and then they came back when they decided to retire or find something to do as they aged. So that's all in that growth rate there. If you look at the participation by region, it's kind of interesting. In the Northeast, 15% of the nation's fishing people are there. 43% are in the South, 18% in the Midwest and West, the mountain states, and in the Midwest, 24%. Look at those numbers and kind of try and figure out where it is. It's not only about the population basis of who's in what states where, although that does have an impact on it. It's also about available fishing days, available fishing sites, and alternative activities. So if you look in the Northeast, which, well, think about it, we have heavy winters. Our fishing season generally is from April through October. That's both freshwater and saltwater. You're limited. You probably have half of the fishing days that the folks down in the South do. If you look at the South, there's an abundance of fishing opportunities there. I believe there's 16 states that in total are saltwater-based states. South has an awful lot of them. Warm weather throughout the year, great bassing rivers and streams and lakes, and relatively year-round fishing. So you would expect to see a higher population there. Kind of the Midwest is a kind of a reflection of the Northeast without the saltwater angling opportunities. Of course, they have the Great Lakes, and some of the lower portions of the Midwest do have closer to the 365 type fishing, which enables them to get out. The enigma out here is the West at 18%. If you look at the 18%, there's a much higher proportion of folks fishing in California, for example. When you get into the Rockies and the Cascades and the like, not only are you challenged by the opportunities and the weather, you're also challenged by other outdoor activities that may draw away from those folks that fish. So, for example, in that situation, camping and hiking and skiing and all of the various activities that are there that might vie for the folks that are also going to do fishing, well, that bleeds off the people that participate in that area. So it's kind of fun to know that. Why is it fun? Well, if you're thinking of opening up a tackle store, this kind of tells you a little bit about all, right? You might want to consider opening one up in the South. And if you're looking for an ideal place that blends salt and freshwater fishing, well, Florida not only is a peninsula, but it sticks out in terms of something like that with great freshwater as well as saltwater opportunities. So that's who's participating, that's where they're participating, and that's the percentage of the country in terms of who's fishing in that group. When you look at who those people are, it's kind of interesting, right? It's 5.1 million first-time participants, and that was actually up about 1 million people from 2023. Well, if it's up that much, how come the participation has stayed relatively consistent, right? You have 5.1 new, 41 or so million continuing participants. That means that they fished in 2023 or before and are continuing to fish in the current. And you've also had a group of lost participants, and you lost 16 million people. So when you're looking at eBay, if you're looking at Facebook Marketplace, if you're looking at garage sales and yard sales and you see fishing tackle available, why is that? There's a lot of people that have either lost interest in it or could no longer participate in it, maybe due to physical limitations and the like. And as a result, they drop out of the base. So the challenge of the fishing industry is always to replace those 16 million. And they've done a pretty good job of that. As we mentioned, you've got growth in the older segments. You also have growth from the youth angler group. And you also have growth from people coming back to the sport that at one time fished, gave it up, and are coming back to it. So a lot of dynamics here to understand in terms of not only who your customer is, but who your neighbor is when you're fishing on the stream or in the surf or on a boat. And, well, it's always fun to know that, particularly if you have a vested interest in the fishing industry. I can tell you from the reels across my desk, I always ask the stories behind them if I can, and it's always fun to find out. Some folks that are returning said, I had this fishing reel as a kid. It sat on a shelf for 20 years. I decided that I want to go back out fishing again. I'd like you to turn this reel up and help me get back on the water. Some of them are treasures. My dad had this one. He recently passed away. I'd like to preserve this. I'd like to have you service that and have it as a keepsake. So in those situations, you're seeing lost participants. You're also seeing people return to that. Well, when they return, what do they do? Or what are those 41 million doing on a regular basis? They do a look here at the level of commitment. And the level of the commitment looks at who's the most avid. In other words, when you look at a magazine that's advertising the latest and greatest in fishing reels and technologies and high-priced reels and whatever else bells and whistles you want, who are they selling to? A lot of them are selling to the most avid, and that's the 6% of 100%, a clear, very small minority of the folks are considered the most avid. And the most avid is basically weekly trips. They want the latest and the greatest in terms of fishing tackle. They want the advantage wherever they can get it when they're on the water. And, well, they take it seriously, if you will. I'm not quite sure it's the Bassmaster pros, but they are people that have a vested interest in doing the best they can when they're out there, and they're always chasing things. But the average angler only does 1 to 11 trips a year. Think about that. If you're in the South, that means you're going once a month. If you're in the Northeast, as we mentioned with the limited piece, maybe you're going twice a month for 6 months. If you're in a place that has fair weather and so on, that have other activities, maybe you just concentrate your trips to, say, vacations. Maybe you have a cabin house, or maybe you rent property near a water or on the water, and you're only going for 5 times, 2 times a week, 2 weeks a year rather, to get that. So it's interesting to note that the 1 to 11 trips, the vast majority of the folks say, for the most part, of those folks, 30% said it's about right. I'm an occasional person, and that's as often as I want to fish. There are some folks that would like to fish more. That's this demographic here, and says about 30% would like to fish more. Think of it. I can think of that and relate personally. When I was working, boy, I would have liked to have fished more, but I think I would have classified myself as an occasional angler because time didn't permit it, right? And then there's a lot of the avid folks that would like to fish more, but not as much, right? There's only 1 in 5 says they'd like to fish more, maybe because they're always fishing. I don't know. And about the same amount say that it's exactly what I want to do. And there's a few folks that don't fish in this survey that would like to take up fishing, and that's about 3% of the folks that were interviewed there. So kind of fun in that regard. Well, we had mentioned the outdoor states. What competes with fishing, right? Well, a lot of things, and most of them are outdoor related. It was interesting when I first started doing this and I was reading about the COVID impacts and the like. You got a lot of interesting activities that were indoor-based activities. Some of them kind of surprising in terms of recreation, but something like bowling certainly didn't surprise you. There were folks that would prefer to bowl, but if the bowling alleys were closed or you had limited access to them during COVID, you searched for something you could do, and generally you searched outdoors. But some of the other things, surprisingly enough, was movie going, right? And we all know that the cinemas were closed during that period, and ballroom dancing was in there. I mean, a lot of fun things. But if you look at it today, the ones that pretty much are either crossover activities where folks that fish also do this, or they're competitive time grabs from fishing where folks make an either or choice. So you have camping, walking, hiking, bicycling, running, bird watching, wildlife viewing, hunting, and kayaking all compete for the folks that the fishing industry would like to have fish more often, and of course buy more if you're in the buying and selling business, right? So that brings us to the last thing that I wanted to cover today. There's an awful lot of information. Again, I would encourage you to go pull the report if you like. But this is just a taste of what the folks who are looking for information on it go for. So when you look at where do the people fish, so 60% of people fish freshwater. Go back to the map. That makes sense. You have 16 states that border saltwater. That means that there's 34 states that don't, and your primary options in those states is freshwater fishing. There's about 14% that only fish saltwater. There's about 11% that fish salt and freshwater. Those are great. Those are the coastal states, right, including here in New Jersey. And interestingly enough, there's about 4% of folks that only fish fly rods. And here in the Northeast, saltwater fly rod fishing is on the increase, which is nice to see. So it's fly fishing in freshwater and saltwater. About 2% do that solely. And saltwater fishing is about 1% of everybody that does the fishing. So what does this all mean? Well, to summarize this, the industry is actually in good condition. So it's got a record number of participants, although the number of participants that are withdrawing or leaving the sport should be a concern. It has a record number of participants, but you would like to see the recruitment of youth anglers increase. We know that if a person does not start fishing by the age of 8, chances are that they're probably not going to start fishing unless they are invited by somebody to go out on the water with them. And that continues to be the number one reason why people pick up a rod and a reel and decide to go fishing. It's either viewed as a family activity or a social activity. And most of the time it's something that they like to do with somebody. So I would encourage you, if you're out and about, if you have a friend that maybe not fishing today, maybe you want to mention, hey, why don't you come along with me, take this trip, you may enjoy it. And I think that's probably one of the ways to ensure that the health of the industry and the health of participation and, well, everybody enjoying what we enjoy remains. Just bring more people in, get them excited about fishing, teach them the way to fish properly, and, well, the industry will sustain itself. That's kind of the summary of this report. Again, it's a very long and lengthy report. You can go and look at all kinds of things. I just chose some of the ones that I thought you would find most interesting. And maybe the next time you're out fishing, observe the tackle that folks are using, observe their experience levels, have a conversation about what got them into fishing, why they stay interested in fishing, and, well, you never know what you're going to learn. I've always had that inquisitive mind. I've always thought to ask people. As I mentioned, that's anecdotal, right? I gather my information from what people tell me, but it's always nice to see a survey like this that confirms some of your suspicions and sheds light on others. For example, at 36% of the participation rate that's female is growing, and that's always fun, right? You maybe in bass pro shops or something, and you see that Penn had a reel for sale called the Penn Passion. It was a purple reel. It was designed for women. And you might think, well, why is that? Well, a lot of the first-time anglers were women. And, well, why not design something that might catch their interest as much as visually as much as performance-wise, right? There you go. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that introduction and a little bit of an explanation about what's going on in the fishing industry. Hope it hasn't been too boring. I want to thank you for watching. Also want to thank our first responders, our police, fire, safety, and rescue, everybody involved in keeping us out of harm's way. I truly appreciate what it is you do day in and day out. Well, we'll be back on the bench. We'll be working on some fishing reels. If you like this kind of thing, please like it. If you want to see more, please subscribe. And, well, I wish you and anybody that you're bringing along fishing a great day on the water, fun fishing, and great friendships. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thanks for watching.